Namaste, Babaji.
How's this? Is this better?
Yes, yes, Babaji. Yeah. Namaste. Very nice to see you again.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
So, this will be a recording. There will not be any audience. We will record it and later we will edit it and publish it on the YouTube channel, the Advaita Academy channel. But
Great.
I will speak as if there is an audience. So, I will do the opening prayers and I will introduce you to the audience and then I will start with the questions. Some 6 to 7 questions. We will record for some 50 minutes and then we will conclude.
Okay.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. A very warm welcome to another session of Conversations on Consciousness. And we have with us a very special guest, Sri Babaji Bob Kindler ji. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you for making time for this session. This is Nitin Shrida. And before we proceed, let me begin with a prayer. Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Om Jayanti Mangala Kali Bhadrakali Kapalini Durga Kshama Shiva Dhatri Swaha Swadha Namostute Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Shri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Once again, welcome everyone to this Conversations on Consciousness session. We have with us Sri Babaji Bob Kindler ji. Just a brief introduction. He is the spiritual director of the Sharada Ramakrishna Vivekananda Associations, or for short SRV Associations, since 1993, with a teaching center on the big island of Hawaii and a regular Dharma visits to Portland, Oregon in USA. Babaji teaches Vedanta, Yoga, Sankhya, and other philosophical systems of truth with an emphasis on learning to live a divine life and attainment of direct spiritual experience. We are very fortunate to have you, Babaji. Again, thank you for making time for this session. I'm sure all our audience will deeply benefit from your insights and your life journey. So, let me begin my first question about your life journey. Tell us about your life journey, particularly about your spiritual journey. At what age did you really, uh, turn your attention to spirituality or become inspired to look into deeper within, especially being born in the West? How did you discover Hindu spirituality? Who were your early influences, early teachers who inspired you, and basically what drove you to this spiritual path?
Very good. I'm delighted to be here. First of all, to say that, and thank you so much for uh, having me in this interview format. That series of questions is always one that I've had difficult answering before, basically because I cannot answer it without admitting that Indian spirituality wasn't available to me, as it's not available to most youth and teenage in America. Unfortunately, Western culture, many of us came to Indian spirituality much later. We were lucky if we got it in our 20s. I awoke to it at about 19 years of age. I would say that my parentage was two very good ethical, moral people and four good brothers and sisters, one of which also took to the Indian path and got initiation. Probably, to cut to the chase, kind of with the whole topic is that I was born in Portland, Oregon, or nearby to Portland, Oregon. And unbeknownst to me, for the first 20 years of my life, Swami Aseshananda Maharaj, who was a sannyasin of the Ramakrishna Order and the last living disciple, eventually the last living initiated disciple of Holy Mother, was right across the river from me, the Willamette River. So I grew up as a young boy playing sports and going to school and everything with this great Swami of the order, Ramakrishna Order, right across the river within like 10 miles of me or less. I was in the southwest, he was in the southeast. So that I have to count that as one of my influences, because later on I found out about past births and reincarnation and Maya and samsara and all those very good topics that we learn about in the Sanatana Dharma. And we're better off if we learn them young and early. And so the other influence came to me a little later with the founder of our SRV Association's Lex Hixon, who himself was about 10 years my senior, and he was a disciple of Swami Nityasvarupananda in New York, and got initiated there, and then came through Oregon and Hawaii, where I was living eventually in my 20s, and met me and referred me back to Swami Aseshananda in Portland. So I had to leave my own place of birth, Portland, Oregon, find this other Western man who was initiated by Nityananda, and then have him tell me, well, when you go back home in the summer to see your parents or your mother, who was my father, had passed by then, you should go and see Swami Aseshanandaji, because I see you're reading the Gospel of Ramakrishna. So that's a connection I can make next, is that the first spiritual book I picked up was the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And I did that pretty much on my own. There was no one around who was necessarily reading the Indian scriptures when I was in my 20s. So I got that beautiful divine manuscript when I was about 21 years old, and started reading it. And at about that time, I met Lex Hixon, and he told me about that Sri Ramakrishna had a lineage, and that lineage, actually a lineage holder, was in Portland, Oregon, where I had grown up. So that was all looking back, finding out that basically I had an opportunity to go back and sit in the presence of a great soul like that. So, and he himself had apprenticed Swami Sarada, who was the general secretary of the Ramakrishna Order for so long. And so I had immediate access to what they call sadhu satsanga in my early 20s. I wish it had been earlier, but I think as far as Western people and Western youth go, I have to count ourselves pretty lucky that we meet someone that holy that young.
Oh, wonderful. I think uh, it is all kind of Purva Janma samskara that, someone born in a Portland was able to meet Swamiji in the Portland, whom you were not before aware of before. So it is really, really wonderful. Um, just to add further to it, I think you have received your a dual initiation, one in the Vedanta Parampara of the Ramakrishna lineage, and another was in Kagyu Tibetan Buddhism. So, can you please tell us about these aspects of your spiritual journey, these two different kinds of initiations, and how it has shaped you, and who are your teachers? I think you already mentioned your teacher in Vedanta, but do share some more about your interactions with your teachers both in Vedanta and in Tibetan Buddhism. And a follow-up to that would be to share with us what are the areas of convergence and divergence between Advaita Vedanta and the Tibetan Buddhism, and how have they helped you in your own spiritual worldview?
First thing that comes to mind, Nitin, is that I'm in agreement with Swami Vivekananda sometimes he often said that he didn't really see any essential difference between Hinduism and Buddhism. And I've always felt that way too, is that Lord Buddha, of course, a Hindu man, if you want to call him that. So the great philosophy of Buddhism to me just sounds like and practices like Vedanta does with yoga and that you get into and so forth. So I'm very much happy to have had contact with the great soul, the Karmapa, he was called in Tibet. He's like one of the other main holy beings that you hear about along with Dalai Lama. So like, I met the Karmapa again with this self-same friend of mine, Lex Hixon, who is the founder of our SRV order. And he took me when I was very young, in my 20s. And this was after I had been already read the Gospel of Ramakrishna and met Swami Aseshananda Maharaj. And so I was already pretty much a confirmed Vedantist with my foot on that path. So when I met Karmapa, I was encouraged to, take initiation. In Tibetan Buddhism, they have things called empowerments. And so people go to these empowerments maybe by the hundreds. At that time, Tibetan Buddhism was just having its heyday in the West. So they have these get together in these large groups in auditoriums, and Karmapa would do the black hat ceremony, which is a very powerful ceremony that they do in that tradition. And so I was with Lex Hixon, and he was the interviewer for In the Spirit program called In the Spirit and WBAI radio for over 30 years. And he knew a lot of these people and had close contacts with them. So he was actually able to usher me into the presence of the Karmapa, and both he and I got what's called white Tara and green Tara mantra initiation. So I asked Lex at the time in my youth, I said, I thought I was a Vedantist. Why should I be setting foot on another path? And he said, oh, this will not conflict whatsoever. You're a devotee of the Divine Mother, which I'm sure you and I will probably talk about here during this interview. So what you're getting here from the Karmapa is a direct transmission of the white Tara and the green Tara, which is the Tibetan Buddhist path. And it's going to segue perfectly with your practice with Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. So that's in a nutshell how I could explain it, how the two have come together for me and worked perfectly.
From a darshanik perspective, you mentioned that you see lot of common ground between the Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta, and I think especially from Upasana perspective, there is lot of commonality between Tibetan Buddhism, the Vajrayana Buddhist practices, and our Hindu Shakta Upasana practices and all. So can you just shed further light on these aspects from your own study and your own practice?
Well, I think that as Lex Hixon himself used to say early on, because he went into more traditions than just those two, he used to say, I hold spiritual heritage and citizenship in 4 or 5 different religious traditions of the world. So he took it a bit farther, rather kind of like Sri Ramakrishna did. So if I can cite him again once more, would be to say that when he talked about Mother Tara as if say Ram Prasad Sen of Bengal would talk about Mother Tara, as if there was no difference between Mother Kali, Mother Durga, and Mother Tara. So if I found out the commonality, as you're saying here, between these aspects of the goddess was just deeper insight for me. And it really fitted my temperament because, I was that following of Shakti was really my calling, I feel. I feel like you mentioned samskaras that I must have awoken from my ancestry in the West there in that lifetime due to a samskara. I remember going to college there in Portland, University of Portland, and I was asked to choose a language. There was somebody teaching Sanskrit in Portland University at that time. I knew nothing about Sanskrit at that time, but I chose Sanskrit from the languages that were listed: German, French, so forth. And so I always felt like the samskaras, you mentioned that important word, were there behind me, because none in my family or none in my community or my school had that kind of particular leaning. So I think the samskara was definitely for Mother Path in India, which I felt I was drawn to. And so that was always a big clue for me. And then I met Swami Aseshananda, and of course he was Holy Mother's, Sri Sarada Devi's disciple, and that further confirmed it for me. The practices are mantra, basically, and I've had students since then who have come and also ask about paths that they want to take. You just mentioned that I offer Vedanta. I share Vedanta, I share Tantra, I share Yoga and Sankhya, which I've studied very deeply, all these darshanas, as you say. And I feel like I always have to tell these students that come that they need to find one guru, they need to find one path, and they need to take one mantra, because probably in the West, and I'm not sure in contemporary India what it's like anymore, but people are taking all sorts of mantras, gurus, and paths, and it's really not the way to proceed, in my opinion. So then I always have to defend myself about Vedanta and Tibetan Buddhism, because I did take two paths. But I must say that I took Vedanta first and became fully grounded in that. And then I was able to accept a mother path from another tradition like Tibetan, because of course they had drawn all of those beautiful darshanas from India in 700 AD, when Marpa and Milarepa and all of those great Buddhist cities, siddhas were there, taking Indian teachings across the Tibetan border into Tibet. So there again, not only historically but also spiritually and religiously, I just saw it all puzzle pieces fitting together. I didn't ever have any problem with these two major religions, if you even want to call them two, Vedanta and Buddhism. I will go to India now. I will go to India now and visit some of my Indian students, which I have marvelously, and they'll take me into their homes, and they say, "Will you do a puja in front of our altar, our home altar?" And so I'll sit at the home altar and I'll look at the deities on the shrine, and there's Lord Buddha. And so when I first saw that, I said, "Oh, are you Buddhist?" And they didn't know what Buddhist was. They didn't seem to take Buddha and take it out of the Hindu pantheon and somehow put it as a separate religion and a separate deity. To them, it was all one Sanatana Dharma. Well, that appealed to me. That's the universal mindset that Sri Ramakrishna had, and that's what I was looking for all my life.
Wonderful, excellent, Babaji. One more interesting thing I found while I was researching about your biography and all was that your initial uh, chosen vehicle for sharing about spirituality was music, sharing about Hindu wisdom. You started this Jaima music back in 1980s. So can you tell us about that part of your journey? What made you start this Jaima music, and what kind of activities were done through that? And are you still involved with the Jaima music? Are you still doing new albums and bhajans, kirtans, etc.? Do share with this. I find this very fascinating. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Shrim Saraswatyai Swaha. That's another one of those great goddesses, along with Durga, Kali, and Tara, that just seems to fit into one universal mold for me, Saraswati. So I would say that some of the musicians I met and most of them India, had Saraswati. Like I knew Ali Akbar Khan, for instance, for a while, and he had Saraswati image on his altar and told about her. So I think with Jaima music and how I started out in music, whereas I probably cannot thank my ancestors for awakening to Indian spirituality, I can thank them for awakening to music. My family was very musically oriented, and both my mother and father were trained as classical pianists. They didn't go into it professionally, but they always could sit down and play wonderfully on the piano when they were older, and used to play with myself and my brothers and my sister when we picked up violin and cello and other instruments and started studying them with a good teacher in Western classical music. So that came from the ancestors. And that music then led me very nicely towards spirituality. I never thought that music would be my, my path of spirituality, but it led me to spirituality. That's, not a Brahma or Shabda Brahma. That's God as sound. And I think I was always looking for that too, when I was a bit dissatisfied with the classical music orchestra life that I was leading, playing in professional orchestras. When I found out that it was being done quite a lot for money and for profession and for fame, and I got disappointed in that. And I thought, well, this music really should be offered to the Lord, to the Mother of the universe. And so that began to dawn on me over time. I realized that all music comes from her and should be offered back to her. And that was a perfect fit for me in order to be able to continue. So in 1980, I went ahead and founded, as it were, Jaima Music. And Lex Hixon, again, his name keeps coming up, encouraged me to do this. He said, what are you going to call it? So I called him in New York one day and I said, I'm going to call it Jaima Music, Victory to the Mother. And he said, great, you've named it. Now you've dedicated yourself to the Mother. And now just go forward on your path. So from then on, I started putting out what was back then called cassettes. Don't know if you remember them. And then turned into CDs. And now we're talking about all of these downloading and everything that's going on with the music industry. But in the meantime, I put out many, many titles of both bhajans and stotrams. And there I went to the Ramakrishna Order, and some of the young monks taught me what a stotram was. And so I got very interested in Shankara and Nirvana Shatkam, for instance, or Hasta Amalaka Stotram, or these other beautiful great spiritual works that are chanted and sung rather than just recited. And so that began to give me these ideas. I also learned a lot of bhajans from several of the Ramakrishna Order Swamis and Brahmacharis. And so they taught me a lot of the Ram bhajans and Tulsi bhajans, and those just really appealed to me. So I had Western classical music going on one side, and I had Indian bhajans and stotrams going on the other. I had Vedanta going on one side, Tibetan Buddhist going on the other. And all of those came together and fit for me. Some hybrids work, I used to say. Maybe there's some hybrids that don't, but those hybrids always worked for me. And I'm still playing Jaima music. Yes, I still not quite as facile at 74 as I used to be on my instruments. And my voice isn't, is there some aging going on, which Lord Buddha teaches us about. So, but I do my best, to keep up that standard of divine music.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's all truly mother's blessings only, as you rightly say. Um, that reminds me that one opening shloka from Saundarya Lahari, if I am not wrong, wherein Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya says that without the mother, even the Shiva cannot move. If I remember correctly, that's what Bhagavad Pada Acharya says. Okay,
Very
so
nice.
this brings me to my next question. I have followed you for quite some time, and you refer to your spiritual path or spiritual method as Shakta Advaitavada. So, can you shed more light on how you perceive this? So, what are the core aspects of your teaching? And if we have to do a comparison, there is of course Advaita, and by Advaita we often associate these Shankaracharya and Bhagavad Acharya's Kevala Advaita. So, how does this Shakta Advaita Vada differ from Shankaracharya's Advaita, if there is a difference? And what role does consciousness, Chit or Shiva, play in this worldview? And also share about your understanding. We have been speaking about Mother, Divine Mother, Shakti, but in the context of philosophy, your understanding of Shakta or usage of the Shakta and Shakta Advaita, the Shakti, do shed light on all these aspects.
Mm. Well, I can try and shed light. It's up to Mother to do that. But basically, I've studied Shankara and read most of his scriptures. We've have taught them in retreat to my students. Very, very important, great soul of India. And the Advaita Vedanta, particularly with his teacher's teacher, Gaudapada, has always been of great interest to myself and to the students of SRV Association. So we've taken Gaudapada's Karka seriously to study several times in our retreats. So I would say that it's since we know that Shankara's life, that he was basically following the Shaivite darshan, you could say, but that he also sang hymns and wrote hymns to Bhavani, Divine Mother. And so I would think that in any case, Divine Mother is always hidden. You know, she's just, they talk about her as being hidden, in hiding in plain sight, I guess you could say, because all of nature is also her playground. So since that's the case, I wouldn't say that from that standpoint there's that much difference between Shakta Advaitavada and Shankara's Advaita Vedanta. That path, Shakta Advaitavada, was one that came to me when I started researching the scriptures of India to find out how many different paths there are. We know there are 6 orthodox darshanas, and we know there's some Nastika and Astika divisions. But one thing that doesn't come out very much is all of these vadas or these paths. And so there's Satkaryavada and so forth, Mayavada. And so I found 30 of those anyway in a list in Indian scriptures. And one of them that came forth and struck me most was Shakta Advaitavada. And then I went to India once and met a man, a tantric teacher, who proclaimed that he was a member of that path. So I immediately adopted that and took it home, because I hadn't, it's not like I didn't have a name for a path. I mean, Ramakrishna Vedanta, if you want, although my teacher didn't really like the phrase. He didn't want to bolster the personality, as classical Vedantists are careful about. But nonetheless, if you read Ramakrishna in the Gospel, for instance, he's speaking mostly Tantra and yoga, and he doesn't speak that much Vedanta, really. It's Swamiji that Vivekananda that brought the Vedanta out and brought it to the West for us. So I think those two, again, make a perfect hybrid when you bring together and also acknowledge the fact that these great souls like Shankara were also aware of Divine Mother, hiding in plain sight. She was like Sri Ramakrishna said, without her, I can't even lift my finger. So Shiva might be transcendent in all consciousness and so forth, but if he's going to express himself, he's going to need Shakti. And so that's, again, just another perfect fit that made me enamored of Indian philosophy and Indian religion more than any other religion in the world. And I like them all. I like all the religions of the world.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, I think You rightly said, from one perspective, the Shakta, there can be no difference between Shakta Advaita and the Kevala Advaita, because even there are many Shakta works attributed to Bhagavad Padacharya himself. The most renowned is the Saundarya Lahari, but he is also said to have written a Bhashya on the Lalita Trishati, the 300 names of Mother Lalita. So I also find it very fascinating how in Sanatana Dharma all these darshanas are very interconnected. There may be areas of divergence, but they all fall into place in a larger puzzle, in the big picture, or the eagle's
Yes.
eye view, bird's eye view, as they say. Okay, so moving forward, I want to highlight another aspect of your life journey. You're not only a musician, you're not only a teacher, but you're also an author. You have written more than a dozen book, I think 15 or 15, 16 books on Sanatana Dharma and Adhyatma. So I want to request you to share about your journey as an author, especially or someone who is writing on Hindu spiritual wisdom and practices. So, what made you take up book writing? Were there any requests from your students, or were there any particular incident that made you think that you should use this writing the books as a mechanism to share knowledge? And as a what are the challenges do you see in conveying the deep truths of dharma and adhyatma to a contemporary Western audience? Basically, since you are based teach in United States, so I would presume that much of your audience is based out of United States itself, not an Indian audience. So non-Indian audience, non-Indian
Mm.
students. So, what have been some of the challenges for you to communicate these teachings of Dharma and Adhyatma through a Western audience? And while you are writing, what kind of challenges you faced, and do share as a whole about this writing journey.
Mm. Well, I think one of the greatest challenge is having to teach a Western audience. I think even Swamiji found that when he came here, Swami Vivekananda, I mean, is that he found out that the Westerners were rather like fire on straw. You know, they would hear something new, and they'd flare up. But then later on, they couldn't hold that light. You know, they didn't stay at it, as if religion wasn't something that was to be kept as a lifelong occupation. In India, it's the main premise upon which you live is religion, spirituality, and philosophy plays a big part in that. So the greatest challenge is being to find interested people in the West. I think you and I will probably talk eventually about this retreat I'm giving in Rishikesh in February of next year, where so far I've managed to gather 15 to 20 people to come on this retreat with me from America, from the West, and they're going to go all the way across the world and fly with me, and then go to Rishikesh and drive to the Sarada Devi, which is run by the Ramakrishna Order, and we're going to give a 1 week retreat there on Om, on the Word. I'm calling it a week with the Word. So I have 7 days of teachings I'm going to give to them. So I consider it, a huge feat that I'm able to even find 15 or 20 people that would want to go do something like that. I'm not sure how many of the Indian locals will attend that retreat, but they're all welcome, of course. So yeah, as far as challenges go, that's the main one, is finding people who are interested who will stay with it in the West. Like I said, we weren't raised with it, anything like that, and what we were raised with was rather conventional as far as religion goes. It wasn't all consuming, like of the type you see when you read Sri Ramakrishna about his life, how completely consumed he was with Mother Kali, and with non-duality. He was having experiences of it, not just studying it. So that's the kind of thing that poses a challenge for SRV associations. And where there's no attention, there's not a lot of financial support. So we've kept SRV going with great difficulty for some 35 years now. And so it's pretty much based on the fact here that the word sadhana is probably not known. To actually do a practice every day is rather rare here. Whereas you'll go to Indian households or go to India and you'll see them making time every day for their God, as they call it. If you even talk to businessmen on the street and who are selling incense, oh, I do all this for my God, they say. So they always have behind it this faith, this great faith that all of life is to be dedicated to that great principle. And here, both sadhana, meditation, study is rather resisted, which is another reason why Buddhism has become more popular here, because left people feel good about meditation, who want to get away from conventional religion and get to something deeper. Then meditation is usually the step for them. But that Buddhism is more vipassana rather than, as you said, upasana. So Sri Ramakrishna championed both. You have to believe that God is with form and God is beyond form, both. And God's beyond both those concepts as well. So that kind of all-encompassing conclusion or siddhanta is what draws me. And I'm having a hard time finding a lot of people who are interested in that kind of thing. And I don't know how much different it is in India anymore. The overall search for money and fame, wealth, and fame and so forth is pretty much consuming the whole world, I think. I think we call that Maya, and I think that leads to samsara myself. So anyway, I hope I haven't soured the interview by bringing that up, but that's a great challenge to be able to find people. I mean, what Christ had 12 and Sri Ramakrishna had 16. Lord Buddha had the Noble Eight, and a few others that came later. So it's not like you're the Lone Ranger, as we say here in the West. Everyone's had that problem finding people in the Burloka to be interested in Satyaloka, if you want to put it that way.
True, definitely. The books you took to writing as a in order to address this issue also, I would presume of difficulty in finding direct students, but through books you could reach a larger audience.
Yes, thank you for filling that in, because that's exactly one of the reasons I started writing books. I have to admit not being a very good student of secular studies when I was young. I passed all my courses, but I wasn't all that interested in secular studies. What I was good at was music, English, and physical education. So those three things I surpassed, I was good at. So since I was good in English, I was interested in language. That later led me to the word, how words are fraught with meaning. And that's another great teaching in both Tibetan Buddhism and Vedanta, is that the Divine Mother is the power in all words, the power of intelligence. That always inspired me and still inspires me to this day to think that words are filled with intelligent particles, just like objects here are filled with atomic particles. So I used to say, atomic particles, atmic particles. If you can find the atmic particles in everything, you'll probably do it through profound words like they have in Sanskrit. So that's again why I got so interested in Sanskrit. So in my English books, to Mother Durga first, to Mother Kali second, and then the Ramakrishna stories I gathered I did a version of Yoga Vishishta in English, and went on to write a host more books. I always put Sanskrit slokas and give the English rendering. Uh, Lex Hixon was a very good master at that, so he was my mentor. So that was another reason why I could come forth with these books and have them hold together the way I hope they do.
I think your last book was the book on footfalls of the Indian rishis, and um, yes, yes, this one, wonderful. So I read that it is a 800-page voluminous book, and I read a very high praise in the Prabuddha Bharata journal for the book as well. So,
Mm.
can you share more details about the book for our audience, and something about kind of an overview of the content of the book, and what what was the idea behind the book, and what you wanted to communicate? Who are the intended audience for the book?
Mm. Well, it's one of the more recent books. I have actually a follow-up to that book now, which is called Teachings of the Matri Avatar, which is a teaching about Holy Mother, Sri Sarada Devi's teachings. And the main facet of the book that could be a little bit different than others, that although you said there's 800 pages there, 300 pages of those are charts, color charts. So a person can get a visual and at the same time read the words. And that was a tact I took so that I thought that maybe it would help attract more people to the teachings of Sanatana Dharma, or just Dharma even, overall, if they could have a visual connected to these great teachings. Because most people are visually oriented, I think, in this day and age. They say the seer, those who are psychic and who see inward, they're more like uh, attached to visions, but the people who are more mystical are attached to hearing, like the yogis hear the word, hear the sound of Om and so forth. So you can see the light or you can hear the sound, and those are basically two different temperaments. So the methods to use for those are put together in that book, Footfalls. So 300 color charts with all the teachings I could possibly think of and learn in Sanatana Dharma, and then commentaries on all of those charts all the way through the book. That's the idea. And when I first put it out in people in India saw it, they said, "Oh, this is the Bible of India," they said. And I'm not sure who my readership is for that book. I'm first writing it in the West in English with Hindu teachings in it so that people can expand their knowledge of these profound Indian philosophies. But I don't think I'm teaching the Indians anything new. I mean, this is right out of their own traditions, but maybe they need to be reminded of it. So, Maya and the world tends to make people forget. That's called Vishmriti, right? So what we want is Daiva Smriti. We want to have all this divine memory come back to us. So a book like that in the hands of Indians in this day and age could be a great revelation for them to remember how profound, how deep, how vast, and actually how non-dual in essence the Sanatana Dharma really is. I mean, it's eternal. Sri Ramakrishna says that in the Gita. The Sanatana Dharma of the Indians is eternal. It will be here, and it always has been here beyond time. So I think for the Western audience, wake up and see what's available. For the Indian audience, here's a good reminder of what you have. It's kind of like that.
That's a very apt way to put it, considering the contemporary situation we are living in, with Artha and Kama gaining predominance over Dharma and Adhyatma. So
Mm.
it's a good reminder indeed. As we come to towards close to concluding the session, I want to put across one final question to you, Babaji. What do you think is the most important quality in a seeker? Quality a seeker, a spiritual seeker, or a devotee must develop to travel the on the path of Sanatana Dharma. And what are your advices to such beginners on the spiritual path?
Mm. Since I have had some experience in that with both Hindu students and American students, I can speak to it a bit. I think that basically, if you're talking about newcomers, then it's a little bit different than seekers. If you have a newcomer, you want to make sure that they have sincerity. They said that Sri Ramakrishna would forgive all sorts of faults and shortcomings and take you on to teach you. But the one thing he couldn't brook was insincerity, because it's just wasting the time of both teacher and student if the student's not sincere in the path. It's a lot of wasted time that's going on. And it happens also with occult followings in religion, in both East and West. So basically, I'd say that if it's a person who's approaching the path, you look for sincerity. If it's a person who's on the path and they're beginning to make progress or wanting to grow spiritually, I'd say that you'd probably want to find in them some stick-to-itiveness, some perseverance to move forward. And if they advance in the path, then I think what you hope is for that one quality that's so rare, I think, in spiritual paths is called viveka, discrimination. That's why Swamiji named himself that before he came here to the West. I think he probably knew that he would meet a lot of people here who were not so sincere, probably not that constant in their practice, and also didn't know the difference between the real and the unreal. I'd say that for the failings I've seen in religion and in individual practitioners, the main one that I see people falling off the path due to is the lack of the ability to discriminate between the eternal and the non-eternal. And Vedanta comes right out and says that Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. And there are great sayings like that tell you, you need to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff. That's how Jesus would have said it. And then find out what's eternal, dedicate yourself to that. Find out what's non-eternal, and watch it from a distance. Learn to observe it as a witness. I mean, these are all beautiful teachings in India that that give more substance to the teachings that Jesus gave in the Middle East 2,000 years ago.
Thank you very much, Babaji, for a wonderful conversation and for sharing about your wonderful life journey and your engagement with Adhyatma traditions, especially in the Ramakrishna lineage and Vedanta. So, thank you for shedding light on all these things. Viewers, Babaji is conducting a retreat in Rishikesh. The retreat is from February 21st to February 28, 2025. And if you, for more details and including registrations, you can reach out to Babaji on their website, or you can write to Babaji on his email ID, which is babaji at hialoha.net. I think if you search on the internet, you'll easily get it. We had also shared the flyer on our social media. You can check that out and reach to Babaji if you want to attend the retreat. Uh, Thank you again, Babaji, for this wonderful session, for a very rich and insightful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nitin. Great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Viewers, with this, we conclude the session. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Okay, Babaji, thank you very much. It was very good session.
Oh, you're such a good questioner, and you didn't put me on the spot hardly at all.
Yeah, our purpose is to put the spotlight on knowledge than on
Yes.
the
Oh,
person.
there you are. That's right. Yeah. I like the title, Conversations in Consciousness. That's beautiful. I like that.
Hari Kiran ji gave that title.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Well, I will let you go. I know you're a busy man, and I'll look forward to the edited version of this at some point. Keep us in touch with it.
Yes, yes. Once it is published on our channel, I will share the link. It might
Okay.
take 2-3 days at best. Maybe by the end of this week or early next week, we'll publish it, and I'll share the link with you and Annapurna ji. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you. Namaste.
Aloha, namaste.